Hello and welcome back to my channel, Thomas Ashley, and welcome back to my series, Candid with Cancer, episode 4. I hope you're enjoying this series so far. It's tough, it's hard, and there are very few positives to see, especially at the moment. But if it's doing what it needs to do, reaching the people it needs to reach, and if you guys are enjoying it, and I love it. Not only that is, I love it too. I love reading it, bringing it from the page, giving it a voice, because that's what it was meant to do in the first place. But without further ado, let's get into episode 4. Candid with Cancer 4, my first cancer diagnosis, part 4. The chemotherapy started on Saturday, 14th February. There's not a way to describe it really, apart from impending doom, or a ticking time bomb until it took effect, and you'd feel all of it. I think over the 5 to 6 months I was in the hospital, I had chemotherapy intravenously for 35 days. A whole month. There were all types of different chemo drugs I was taking. Some were red, which made your sick wee and poo red. One was in a syringe, and you could feel them putting it into my line. It was cold. But you could also taste it. It had a metal taste, the metallic twang. There's plenty of others, but those ones stood out for me. After the course of chemotherapy, which lasted between 1 to 2 weeks, it was just then a waiting game to recover, to be as healthy as possible in the hospital so you could have a week at home. A week of rest to prepare yourself to do it all again. But it was never as easy as that. If anything, having that week at home, preparing yourself to come back into the hospital to do it all again, was something I can't describe to you, or even myself. A waiting game, counting down to your own demise once again, knowing what is to come, but there's nothing you can do about it. Even after the chemo is finished, you were extremely ill for at least another week, usually 2. On top of that, I was having blood transfusions every day or 2 to top my hemoglobin back up, or platelets. There's always a huge risk of infection. As I said previously, the cancer destroys your white blood cells, which then destroys your immune system, specifically your neutrophils, the white blood cells which fight infection. And the only way to fix this is with chemo, which also destroys it all. So, any type of infection which the majority of people can fight off posed a huge risk of life to me. Hospital life was hard, but just had to become the norm because I had no other option. Taking 30 tablets a day, at different intervals, having your observations done every 4 hours, trying to keep yourself entertained when you were healthy enough to do something other than lie in bed being ill all day. I can't tell you how many times I was physically sick. I assume it's in the hundreds, if not more. There were times, especially while on the chemo, where I'd fall asleep for 15 to 20 minutes, then wake up to be sick a couple of times, and then repeat that process for weeks. And when you're ill, you don't eat. And a lot of the time, nothing was coming up, just urging, because my body couldn't cope with it anymore. Even though they were the norm, they are horror stories which no one would just accept. But you had to. I remember I struggled to shower, to do the basic things you do to live. I would have a shower, then I would come out, and I couldn't even walk back to my bed. I needed to sit down as I was exhausted. I thought I was going to faint. I had to get a disabled badge because when I could leave the hospital, I couldn't walk to the car. I couldn't walk more than 50 meters before needing a rest, and this was hard to accept. I was fit and healthy 15-year-old who loved sport and was playing 6 days a week to suddenly not even being able to walk on my own. That was horrible. Losing my hair was another side effect which I just paved over, but that was awful. Going bald, when your hair starts to fall out. You sort of just don't know. Like, do I shave it off? Or just let it fall out? But primarily it makes you different again. A big sign saying he is different. And it may seem silly, but trust me, with everything else going on, it is something else which adds insult to injury. I remember when I came out of the hospital, we went on a holiday as a family, and we went for a meal. And I was wearing a hat because of my hair. And my dad told me to take it off. But I couldn't. Even though I was just with my family and in a foreign country, I couldn't take it off. And then he got angry. But I couldn't take it off. I was embarrassed with who I was. A lot of these emotions and feelings and questions were always there, but I didn't know what it was or how to voice it. I didn't know what was going on. I had already had enough on my own plate, and I didn't want any more. I didn't know how to process it, but also didn't want to burden no one else with it all. Everyone was already doing everything for me, and I couldn't give back anything. I had to get on with it, though. I didn't have time for my mental health. When I look back at all of this, I still don't process it. I can't. Not to its full extent. I could write forever about my time in the hospital. Maybe I will write more. But I look back, and the physical side was horrendous. But what stands out was telling my mum on multiple occasions that I can't do it anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. The pain and suffering would just go away if I was dead. I couldn't deal with what was happening to my body. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. I didn't want to hurt anymore. I was 15. I shouldn't have to. I was hurting, and I didn't want to anymore. I couldn't see any lights in the end of the tunnel. When you are in the hospital, you hear all these stories of people relapsing. People whose treatment hasn't worked and have to do it all again, but worse. After all of this, I always told myself, and continued to do so, I would rather die than have to go through all that again. I genuinely couldn't do it again after everything I had seen and experienced. I thought dying would be easier. I was embarrassed to be the person I had become. Something that has stuck with me for a long time. That continues to stick with me until recently. I was 15, and I was telling myself that I would rather die than face cancer again. I was broken. And that's the end of episode 4 of Candid with cancer. My first cancer diagnosis, part 4. It's getting tougher. It's hard. There's some things I read in there out loud, and even to this day, as much as I can resonate with it now and there's a reason I wrote it, it's still hard to know I felt that way and I was that way. And so I can't begin to imagine anyone who's watching this who doesn't have the permission to feel this way, who feel like they're alone and feel like they're the only people in the world feeling that way. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you if you're watching this in any way, shape, or form and it's helped you, or you know someone it could help. It'll go a long way if you could share this so it reaches the people who need it most, the people who need the help, whether it's been through what I've been through or something that is so different to what I've been through, physically or mentally, whatever it may be. If this can help them, it'll go a huge way if you could please share this so it reaches those people. I'm also going to ask if you are enjoying these videos and you're coming back to watch more, or this is your first video, it'll go a huge way if you could like or comment or even subscribe. I'll be hugely grateful. It'll give me the support I need, and also, I'm not too sure, it just would mean the world to me. I hope you all enjoyed those, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.